Well, hello there. This is Jesse Hall, and you're listening to Business Elite Brevard Edition, Brevard's very own podcast where we talk about everything that's happening here on the Space Coast of Florida. In the studio today, I am honored to welcome Bart Gaetjens. Butcher that enough?
Gaetjens, yes.
Gaetjens and
Bart's good.
Bart. Yeah, we're informal here today. Bart's in the studio, and I can't wait to get started because even pre-show, so much to share, so much to learn from this guy, who has been commonly referred as the mayor of FPL. Informally, you just mentioned that. I had to go with it because just like a mayor, you are the face of FPL. Now, is that just for this area or for most of Florida?
Brevard and Indian River counties.
Get your lead in. I want you to lean in, Bart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brevard and Indian River counties.
Brevard and Indian River.
Correct.
That's a lot of customers.
That's a lot of customers. That's a lot of miles.
Yeah. Well, you're not kidding. You have to visit all of your customers, or just
I don't visit all the customers. No,
Okay.
I'm on a lot of boards. I go to a lot of council meetings. There's a lot of projects going on
Right.
that require me to travel quite a bit. So I'm on I-95. Of course, that was a little more pre-COVID.
Gotcha. Sorry. So what happened after COVID?
Now a lot of it is done virtually. So
Okay.
a lot of Zoom meetings, things in the virtual world, which, it's not quite the same. And I can tell you that I don't think we've heard everything about COVID.
Right.
For example, this morning, I found out that COVID shrinks your clothes. Because when I went to put on a suit, it was a lot tighter than the last time I wore it.
Yes. COVID-19 is a real thing.
Yes.
some for some people it's COVID-20.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been tough being locked up.
Yes.
And thankfully, we've had entertainment provided by FP&L. Because without the power, there'd been
Exactly.
it would have been a lot more. It would have been a much more difficult lockdown.
Affordable, reliable, and clean.
Oh, I like that. You really are an ambassador. You're quite the the face of FP&L. You seem to love the company. You've been with them for going on 38 years.
38 years in about a week and a half.
That's-
And I've been married for going on 31 years, so shout out to my wife. So
Yeah, big shout out.
When you
Gotta
find-
love the wives.
when you find something you love, you stick with it.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. So, what was your most interesting part? Because I mean, I could agree with you all of your positions, but you've seemed to have some exciting ones.
Well, the job I'm in now,
Yeah.
I really love because I interface with so many people, and external affairs. I mean,
Right.
I'm working with elected officials, I'm working with builders, I'm working with the nonprofit worlds. When there's kind of a crisis or something that needs to be done, I'm usually brought in to assist. So it's a fascinating job. When I was at FPL, or earlier in my career at FPL, I was in corporate security. So we investigated things where people would go out and shoot out our insulators. People would make threats on our employees. We had offices in when you'd walk into. We had a lot of cash in there, so you had to worry about the security of your employees. But also, as part of that job, I investigated theft of electricity, which was fascinating. You learn so much about people, and having to sit across from them and listen to them, why they did it, how they did it,
Right.
things like that. That was one of the more fascinating jobs. And being a meter reading supervisor, I mean, I had 35 people working from me. Some were 18, some were in their 50s.
Okay. So unique positions through your career.
Yes, I've been very blessed.
Yeah, it seems like you've seen the best and worst of people throughout your career.
Yes.
Of course, now like you mentioned, now the position as
External Affairs Manager.
yes, Area External Affairs Manager. Real quick, what describe a day in a life? I don't want to try to guess for our audience that's listening. And besides being the unofficial mayor of FPNL, what is a day to day look like to you? Like you wake up and then what?
Well, I'm on a lot of boards.
Right.
So we have a lot of virtual meetings. And one of the reasons why I'm on a lot of the boards is I feel that in order to know your community, you really want to have your finger on the pulse of the community.
Roger. Okay.
So you look at, environmental, you look at like Lead Brevard, Junior Achievement, organizations like that, CivMill, the YMCA, because you understand what the needs are. You better understand your community. So there's a lot of virtual meetings. Oh, there's a lot of project management. Right now, we've got a lot of solar projects going on.
Is that right?
And then there's the day-to-day activities of different projects we have. You know, when you're in this industry and you have growth in Florida, you have the needs for hardening projects, which you see all the way up and down A1A, US1. That requires a lot of coordination.
Sure.
And there's a lot of behind the scenes. You've got to get the permitting for that. You've got to make sure that's going smoothly. So all those kind of things. And usually something will crop up where you'll get somebody will say, can you please help somebody out with this? You know, somebody that somehow through the system, it fell through the cracks. They've reached out to an elected official, and the elected official is saying, can you please help with this?
Right. Curious. Okay. So a lot of meetings. So I imagine you're just zooming all day long.
Most of the day, I know yesterday I got on at 10 o'clock, and I had one from 10 to 12, 12 to 1, and then 1 to 2. So it was like, how do you run over and get off camera and grab a sandwich or something without being seen on camera chomping away?
But who's booking during lunch anyway?
Usually my wife is in the background. I'll wave and she'll say, do you want a sandwich? And
please feed me.
We do a lot of sign language off camera.
I think it's a new art people are discovering.
Yes, it is.
That and having like a little whiteboard where you just got a little cheat sheet like help. You know?
And learning the background.
Right.
And trying to train through COVID, we got a puppy.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, in the beginning, he wasn't real well trained about, I'm on a Zoom meeting, I can't play with you right now.
Sure.
So I'd get the barking, I'd get him jumping on me. But that's part of what, you know, now that we're in the virtual world, I think that just shows that you're human. The dog barking in the background, you know, somebody yelling or something like that, you know, it makes it interesting.
As long as everybody learns how to mute the mic. We don't have to hear everything. It's okay if you're speaking and it happens.
Yeah.
But when you're not speaking, mute that mic. And I think there's a lot of now protocol. There's a thing called Zoom ethics, you know, almost, you know, where it's like a protocol. You know, these are the things you do and don't do and so forth. And so I think that's, you know, even now we're getting like a webinar culture developing. You know, it's, you know, people are learning how to use an avatar versus the live camera so they can work behind the scenes in their pajamas, you know. Here, just a still picture of myself. There you go. That's all you need to see, right?
And I think we're at the point where everybody's trying to put on a nice background.
I know. Well, people are learning the software is what's going on. Yeah.
I will put a picture of a solar field, or yesterday I had a picture of Tesla, Edison, and of course people were saying, who are those guys behind you? Well, they're kind of my idols. They're industry icons. So.
Yeah. And please pick up a history book. Well, that's awesome. I do like the fact that when people, I mean, for me, I like to see people work at home if they're comfortable. It's more efficient, and when you have kids available too, it's hard. But I really hope that professionals, because I miss the networking. You know, you like me, we're involved with several boards. I sit on a couple boards, nonprofit boards. You as well. Then we of course have a couple of committees that I also serve, and it takes time, but it's, I don't know, and maybe some of the listeners and viewers feel similar. I miss the interaction, the belly to belly, right? And that's like what business is. You know, as soon as you join a chamber, they're like, great, get into our rooms. We're going to do the orientation. The orientation, you have always like some ambassador of the chamber going, this is what you need to do. Show up, show up, show up. All right? Get one-on-one. Everybody in this room needs to do a one-on-one with each other. Go grab some coffee, go grab a lunch, go grab a margarita, whatever, and go get to know each other and how you can
socialize.
Improve each other's business, because everybody knows somebody. Yeah. But my customer, I don't know them yet, but you do, right? So there's always a lot of encouragement and through the organizations, the meetings, and everything else that we're doing professionally, okay, to better serve our communities and so forth. I mean, 30-40% of me still, do it for like the munchies and getting together, getting face to face, having those, a little cocktail hour with everybody, I mean, we all really, really miss that, and I can't wait for us to get back to that routine. But in the meantime, we do what we can. Again, get those better microphones, get those headphones. Try to lock yourself in a nice room without any disturbances for while you're on, and be respectful of those people also on the call. Because I feel like without a boardroom, you can't really control everybody's environment, and that's what the boardroom was so good for, as it was it was a soundproof, kind of, you could just have it out with your team. Nobody's a wiser, and there's no kids or dogs in the background.
It's especially difficult when you have a board that has a lot of turnover. So new people come on, and you see them, but you don't really interact with them like you would if you were sitting next to them. But there are some advantages to virtual. A lot of the meetings, I live up in Titusville in the north end of the county. And of course, a lot of the board meetings I attend might be in Indian River County, might be here in Melbourne. So that means that when we're getting through at 7:30, I'm getting home at 8:30. The next morning, I might be in Vero Beach for a 7:30 breakfast. Now the virtual world, I think there's been some benefits to that. I mean, at least to me, sometimes, all right, you're done with this board meeting. Last night, Junior Achievement, you're done by 6:25, and instead of driving home from somewhere in Melbourne, I can walk over and have dinner. And also, you look, recently we had our CEO make a presentation to the Palm Bay Chamber, and that was virtual. If it hadn't been for COVID, that might not have happened in the past, because with his schedule, it would have been very difficult to get him up here to speak in person. But people seeing him virtually, it was fine. It went very well.
Yeah, again, as the audio and the environment that they're in plays a huge role. So as long as people could hear you, it's great. Could I buy your beer afterwards? No. Because we all. I remember seeing some influential people that I'm like, wow, I need to get face to face with that person. I'll make a beeline for them, and I'll try to get what I need from them. Or just schedule an appointment, something from them. Got to make a contact. Unfortunately, with the virtual world, some discussions you're not going to share with everybody else on the call. Some are meant to be, served, best served privately.
It's hard to bond virtually.
Yeah,
it really is.
But perhaps we'll learn to do that as well. But so for most people, I'm sure they don't mind the long commutes. For yourself, being up in Titusville, which for people who are new to the area, Brevard County is 72 miles long. Titusville is like the last 4 or 5 miles before Volusia or something. So you have Mims and Scottsmore, which I think are a little bit more further out.
Correct.
But it's a very top of the county, and for you serving all of Brevard County, which means the 68 or so miles south of you, and then Indian River, which is another fairly long county, about 40, 50 miles, I believe. That's a long territory.
It's a long territory.
You need to put yourself in the middle of the territory. You put yourself at the furthermost end.
It just worked out that way. I've lived up there for 31 years now, Super Bowl weekend.
Wow.
And the house is paid off. So live on an acre of land. So to me, it's paradise up there.
You're
so
set.
it's worth the commute. Yeah. Quite frankly, a lot of the commutes, you're thinking about, all right, what am I going to do tomorrow? You've got that one-on-one time with yourself to be able to say, what do I need to do here? What are my goals? What have I learned?
Absolutely. A little bit of meditation, a little one-on-one time, solo time.
Yes.
And, if you ever find yourself, having already figured out all those daily conversations and everything's satisfied, then you could turn on Space Coast Podcast Network, listen to our podcast. Is this your first podcast?
I did one last year in Vero Beach. It was my first one to talk about hurricanes.
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
That's all we talked about.
We've had discussions of hurricanes on here. We've had a couple communities. We've had a couple. I work alongside some what they call the emergency response team. But they're pretty much a public adjuster, and so they go out and do all the hard work, immediately after any kind of storm or anything else. Yeah. So these are boots on the ground. These are people who, as soon as a storm happens, before electric is restored, before sometimes even FPL pole crews are out there, they're out there looking at commercial facilities, making sure that they're going to be able to get a claim right away, and they're assessing. So I've had those types of folks in here having conversations. Tortoise Island also had a hurricane thing, and I can't recall if you were invited or somebody else from the power company, but it's a great lesson, and you're more than welcome to come into the studio and use a studio if you want to get a round table of other professionals, because if we are going to be virtual, it's going to be hard to find a podium, and where we could address the county and tell them what to expect.
And we think about hurricanes every day. I mean, it's continuous planning. You're seeing hardening in your community now. And after the 2004 storms, if you were here, might recall that we had poles down, we had transformers down, and it took weeks to try to get everything restored. So we worked with a consultant, and we knew these storms are going to be more frequent and they're going to be stronger. And that's when we decided that we would make the infrastructure harder so it can withstand. Now, it's not going to be, I've had people call me up, why do you have power outages at all? Well, the destruction of Mother Nature controls. I mean, if a big tree is going to come down, it's going to go across the wires. If they're underground, roots can rip them up when the tree falls over. You can have flooding with underground. Let's put everything underground. Well, that's great, but what happens if you have a very wet hurricane? Tropical Storm Faye was one of the worst experiences I think we've had in this county, because all it did was rain for 3 days.
And that was like, wasn't that the no-name storm before they finally identified it?
I think so.
Because it just didn't, there wasn't a whole lot, it wasn't like a wind event. It was a rain event.
Rain event, and that's when I decided I need flood insurance. Even at my house, I've never seen anything like that. But when it rained for 3 straight days, and I saw what it did, especially to the south end of this county. But, we've got to be better prepared for hurricanes. And, now electricity is essential. You've got to have it. If you're out for 3 minutes, it seems like, what's going on?
Well, the kids will let you know first.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom, Dad, where's the Wi-Fi?
Yeah. The Wi-Fi is not working. How come the TV's not on? The refrigerator's light doesn't come on when I open the door. So we realize how important electricity is for everyone. And that's why we've invested up to $6 billion in infrastructure, making the system harder and more storm resilient.
Well, we have a question from the audience. It's a 2-part question.
Okay.
FPL has been a leader in the power gen industry for as long as I've been alive. Frequently, FPL has either had the lowest or the second lowest cost per kilowatt hour and has always passed that savings on to us Floridians. With the current presidential administration's push towards renewable resources, how much will a switch to renewables, i.e. solar and wind, cost the average Florida homeowner, since there is such a disparity in the cost per kilowatt for a combined cycle natural gas power plant? First, the cost per kilowatt of renewables. Part 2, how will FPL be dealing with the requirement for the much larger real estate footprint of renewables?
Well, great questions. No, I think that's very insightful, and they're right. We're 30% below the national average for electric bills. I mean, and these things don't happen by accident. It takes a lot of foresight. As far as renewables, our parent company is NextEra Energy. So they own FPL, and we are merging with Gulf Power, but the technologies we've learned from NextEra Energy, they're the largest renewable energy company in the world. So you look at the wind farms, you look at solar sites throughout the nation and up in Canada, more than likely we have ownership of them. NextEra Energy does. So we learned a lot, but we didn't go into solar saying, this is a gimmick, this is the right thing. We want to do the right thing, but we don't want it to impact the rates. I mean, we could make everything as green as could be, but you might be paying double, triple for your electric bill. So solar now is competitive with nuclear. It's competitive with the natural gas, and the prices are dropping the more we learn. There is a real estate issue. I just took some elected officials in Vero Beach down to one of our solar sites, 500 acres.
Wow.
330,000 panels, and that'll take care of the needs of 15,000 homes. But there's no emissions, so it's helping the environment. The batteries are going to be a game changer. So will it impact the bills? Very, very slightly. And this is something we're doing long before Joe Biden became president, long before Donald Trump was in there and wanted to look at coal. And speaking of coal, we haven't had coal in our service territory in our generation, probably in the last 20 years.
Okay.
And one contract we had where it was a merchant plant that sold us power that was generated from coal. We bought them out and shut them down. So we don't have any more coal in our portfolio. So coal is out, but nuclear, natural gas, and solar. And there's some emerging technologies of green hydrogen. That's a completely different subject. But the batteries now
that's exciting.
are a game changer,
right?
Because they're coming up with a 400 megawatt battery. And just to give you economies of scale, because people say, I don't know what a megawatt is.
Yeah.
A Publix would probably use about a half a megawatt.
A day?
Yes.
Okay, half megawatt.
But that's what they're billed for per month.
Okay.
So when you look at this solar farm, 75 megawatts. So you look and you say, that's a lot of real estate.
Right.
It is, but you have to have balance. So usually what we do is, like in Barefoot Bay, we have one there.
Right.
Across from the Kennedy Space Center, we're constructing a solar site. We will go to areas that were probably fallow orange groves. They're up for sale, but they have to be the right location. Because we could look at property that's 20 miles west of here, but there's no infrastructure.
Right.
So, for example, in Barefoot Bay, right behind the community there, and it's a wonderful community, we were building this solar facility, and it was an old orange grove. It was, weeds are growing in there, coyotes are moving in to eat the armadillo and possum and things like that. So we purchased that, and we turned it into a solar field. And if you think about it, what do solar fields use? Orange groves use.
Right.
A lot of fertilizer, a lot of water, and sunshine. What does a solar field use? Sunshine. So the impact to the environment is immediate.
Right.
But it also keeps the cost down. But, when people say we should all be solar, that's difficult because it is going to take a lot of land. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
So part two is, how will FPL be dealing with the requirement for the much larger real estate footprint of renewables?
Well, we're always looking for property, but again, it's got to be near our existing infrastructure. So in Barefoot Bay, it was right near a transmission line because a solar field, I talked about Edison and Tesla, and it's fascinating the more I get to know about these guys, but a solar field, the panels are creating direct current. They need to go to an inverter. The inverter puts it back into the grid, alternating current. So in this facility at your home, you're using alternating current. And that was Tesla. Edison was big on the direct current. But yes, the real estate is something we have to look at. Usually you want to try to buy something affordable, and again, near our infrastructure. So it is something, and we have a plan now with our Solar Together program to install 30 million solar panels by the year 2030.
Wow.
That's a very ambitious goal. So I'm hoping that in the future you'll see more and more renewables. I think the days of the oil plants are gone. If you think about it, if you've driven up to the north part of the county in Port St. John, we had a plant there for years. That plant was built to help the space program in its infancy. That plant used oil. So you had to bring oil in from a foreign country.
Right.
You had to ship it in here. You could have a spill, the impact on the environment. It wasn't clean. So we raised that and converted it to natural gas. Natural gas is affordable.
Yes.
It's plentiful.
You
don't have the spikes because back when we were so dependent on oil, in the 70s, we were probably the largest user of oil in the entire United States, in the southeast here. And any time that OPEC decided, well, we're not going to give you oil, you had to look at, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to give people power?
Right.
So we've weaned ourselves off of that. And supply and demand, by the utilities converting to natural gas and going into renewables, there's more oil to go around. And I think that overall impacts the gas prices.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. And now that this administration is gonna, I feel like they're targeting natural gas, or at least the fracking part of it.
Yeah, that we're going to have to see how that plays out. But every administration comes a new energy policy, and it's like the space policy. You have a good space policy, and along comes a new administration, and they decide we're going in a different direction. And I just wish that someone would look and say, let's have a comprehensive plan that everybody can agree on and say, this is a direction we need to go.
Right.
But instead, now you get a little bit of confusion of how are we going to do this. But I think, you're going to see more and more reliance on the renewables, especially now that the batteries are coming in. The batteries are a game changer.
Right. And you keep mentioning the batteries, and are they just more affordable, or but
Yes.
you said they have a higher capacity as well?
Both.
Okay.
Yes. So the largest one we're going to have over in Manatee County will be 400 megawatts.
Oh, okay.
Now that's about, if you look at one of these power plants, like the one over in Port St. John, that produces around 1,600 megawatts. So you've got about a fourth of your plant, if my FSU math is working.
Right.
About a fourth of that is in a battery, and that's incredible. So if something happens, we can use that. We can use it at night, because right now they have the photovoltaic, which means that whatever power we're deriving from the sun, it's going right back into the grid. So nighttime, those panels just sit there and wait for the sun to come up. But with now that we've got the batteries, it is a game changer.
Yeah. And who builds it? Are these domestic batteries, or are they made elsewhere?
Well, we have them both. I mean, we have some from foreign overseas, but that company actually moved and set up a big facility in Jacksonville to help supply us with the solar panels. So it's a combination of both, but it's not like North Korea is not supplying us panels.
Sure,
So,
sure. No, I totally get that, but I wonder, because if we can make them domestically, I mean, would that be a cheaper, more affordable product for the consumer versus paying again something that has to be shipped and all the other fees and
I think they've tried it. I don't think it's worked well in the United States because of the salaries. It's hard to compete with the foreign labor, and especially if we pass the $15 an hour.
Oh yeah,
it's going to make it very difficult for manufacturers to compete with some of the foreign produced solar panels.
No, absolutely.
And, we always look at cost to our consumers of what impact is this going to have.
Right. So speaking of acquiring land and getting more and more acres, let's start how many acres would you, I'm sure you know the specific answer, but how many acres would you estimate FPL operates for solar exclusively now?
I'm not sure how many at this very moment how many sites we have, but I'm going to say at least 10. So you've got probably at least 500 acres per site.
Right.
So you're looking at 5,000.
So conservatively between 5,000 and 10,000.
Yes.
Correct. Somewhere in there.
Yes.
What's the ambition? Double that in 5 years? Triple that in 5 years?
Double or triple at least.
Really?
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, we're going into areas when these solar panels in these fields make good neighbors, because that was a big concern in Barefoot Bay.
Right.
Because we literally were backing up to some people's homes where there was a drainage ditch, and on the other side was going to be our facility.
Sure.
So I went out door to door with another employee, and we knocked on the doors, and we showed them, because there was a lot, in Barefoot Bay, and a lot of people didn't know about solar. And there were things, because I read it on social media,
right.
This is going to roast our community. The lights are going to be on. They're going to put a big plant here because now they have the property. So we went door to door to explain and answer the questions, because really the people that were going to be impacted were the ones that were going to look out, and they were going to see it.
Right.
And I can tell you that was great, because what a wonderful community. It was a rewarding experience, one of the best I've had in my career, because talking to the people, I mean, one gentleman, we showed him and we said, well, we're going to have a fence, and then we're going to have this vegetation, so you won't have to see it. And he said, why do I have to see your fence? Why don't you have vegetation, then your fence?
Right.
We went back and said, okay, let's do it. So getting the input from the community was extremely important.
Yeah. No. And a lot of times communities, they think about it. I mean, not for nothing, but Barefoot Bay just reminds me of a kind of like a winter snowbirds kind of thing, where people just come in and they relax.
Half.
Yeah.
Half and half.
The other half are just full-time residents, but mostly retired.
Great people.
Exactly.
And for example, like aren't you going to heat up this community? No, it absorbs the heat.
Right.
And the other thing, the noise, there were no lights. The inverters, you'd be hard-pressed to even hear any noise if you were standing next to them. So, and the other thing about Barefoot Bay was they were concerned about water. The water prices down there in the county's water facility, they knew that that orange grove was going to go away, and they were worried about a development moving in there.
Right.
And now for the next 30 years, they're going to have a solar field. They don't make noise. There's not going to be parties in the field. The animals come back in right after we leave. And when we pull up, let's say 20, 30 years from now, usually the solar panels are good for about 25, 30 years.
Okay.
When we pull out of there, it's a green space.
Right.
So there's no real bad side to solar.
Yeah. No, I mean,
as far as the emissions, the cost, things like that.
Yeah. How easy is it to, let's say, when you do disassemble a field, as you mentioned, where those parts go? Are they safe for the environment to dispose of? And
well, that's something we're going to have to determine. But there are some recycle programs. But right now, we're not there yet. You know, we've been working with solar since the 70s.
Right.
People say, well, you were late in the game because New Jersey was ahead of you. Well, New Jersey up there, the cost of electricity is a lot more expensive than here. So when people would go to put solar panels up on their roof, their payback was a much better payback. Plus, you had a state that was pretty well going broke saying, oh, well, we'll kick in an incentive and we'll give you $500, $1,000, something like that. Well, if you're living on a fixed income and you're in an area where you can't put solar on your roof, why is your tax dollars helping out that guy that is going to put that on his roof? I mean, you can say environmental things like that, but still, you're going to be asking those questions of why is my dollars going to somebody who can probably easily afford it without the tax rebate? And that's what the state of Florida looked and said, if you want to put it on your home, go ahead and put it on your home, but we're not going to send you a rebate. So they did away with that program.
Right.
But still, here, if you go to put solar on your roof, you know, look at the payback and look at the expense. And that's why we have a Solar Together program where you can pretty well invest. You can be part of the solar revolution without having to do the maintenance and things like that.
And I like that, solar revolution, because, it seems like there's a lot more solar companies doing the residential now. It seems like that the residential is a big thing. You know, one thing that I don't want to say involved with, but I was there during the bidding, and we had all of these, and I sat in that room when the council of the city of Satellite Beach sat with all of these contractors for solar to outfit the city. Now, City Hall is 100% sustainable. All the energy it needs is it sits there right on top of the roof. No impact to environment. They're using existing space that had no other function but to keep the rain off of you. You know, so now they have so now the community has a place to go when there's nowhere else because of infrastructure issues. The electrical grid went out. Say a hurricane or wind event, and but now at least the community has still a place where there's going to be some power. I mean, the batteries may not last forever.
Sunshine.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's pretty cool because hurricanes are a real threat, but they don't come around often. You know, so for somebody to decide, well, am I going to put solar on my roof or just get a generator? Most times the generator is the easiest. You know, it's portable. It doesn't increase any more. Insurance costs or anything else, because now you have if you got a $30,000 panel on your roof, it's more wear and tear on that roof. It's it's a lot of weight potentially, and I know the older styles were definitely bigger, but as time gets on, I mean, I remember, and you probably remember, Bart, when satellite TV had just come out, and remember these people's satellite dishes in their backyard. They were 10 feet wide. So imagining with the technology, we're going to start to see
microgrids.
Yeah, because right now, I mean, I think that'd be really cool. Just like I'd like the idea of having a community farm, a community dog park, a community. I think even if it just helps with the street lights and keeps the street lights on during a storm. Whatever capacity to integrate solar in some way or another, I think into any community is
these
pretty
batteries
huge.
Can help with that.
Yeah. Now, when you say these batteries, are we still talking about the lithium type that people are used to in rechargeable cars?
And they look like big tractor trailers.
Oh.
Yeah, so they're
one singular unit? Or are they multiple units?
I haven't seen the one that's 400 megawatts, but I've seen some of the others, and it's like side by side. You've got what looks like tractor trailers for these batteries. So, and you mentioned hurricanes don't come too often.
Right.
And see, to me, they come very often.
All the time.
And I look and, when people say, well, 2020 was an awful year, it could have been worse. We could have been dealing with a hurricane. So my college roommate, he got hit direct by a hurricane. He lives in Alabama right near the coast in Fairhope. he got hit with a hurricane. He had the blue roof, if you remember that. He had sewage backing up in his house, and then here comes another one, and here comes another one. So it was like 2004 for those of us that have lived here.
Right.
It was like, when are these going to end?
Yeah, Louisiana had troublesome time. Thankfully, none of them were more than, I think, a category 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So,
but you know, you look and how it impacted us is we have mutual aid agreements.
Right.
So when a utility in Alabama calls and says we need help,
right,
we send our people up there.
Exactly.
I mean, that is in return, they do it for us because you want to have the power on as soon as possible.
Yeah, I remember Irma. We had a big infiltration. I mean, we had tons of units here. One of the ones was it Polk or Pike? Pike Energy was here. I forget if Duke came over here or not. But they were probably taking care of their. Yeah, but they were all over Virginia.
Yeah.
Speaking of Duke, how many counties do they serve? They're a little bit smaller than you guys.
I don't know. Yeah, they're mainly once you get over towards Orlando, heading northwest. That's kind of the Duke territory. Then you've got TECO, which again is an These are investor-owned utilities, and then you look at like JEA. That's municipal.
Okay.
So, and we just bought Vero Beach 2 years ago, and you ask some of the projects I work on. Well, Vero Beach, I think initially they came to us in around 1970s.
Oh, wow.
And said they wanted us to buy them. I think the community leaders said it would be a good idea because our rates are higher.
Right.
So we kicked it around for a long time. It had gained momentum. Usually there'd be some hurdles to overcome with some of the elected officials. And it finally happened 2 years ago, and it reduced the overall rates of the people living in Vero Beach served by that utility by about 20%. And it really created, it was like economic development. I mean, suddenly people said, I have more money. I can go out to dinner. I have more money to spend. And then COVID hit.
Right.
But still, wonderful community. But it was odd when you go to Indian River County, and it was like, okay, I'm outside our service territory. I don't have that in Brevard. Everywhere I go in Brevard, our customers are served by FPL.
Right.
So, but there are actually 55 electric utilities in the state of Florida.
Oh.
You think of FPL.
I had not known that.
Yes. You look at Kissimmee has their own, New Smyrna Beach has their own, OUC, Orlando Utilities, municipal run. So there's a lot of small utilities out there. And
55, I would have never guessed.
Yeah, so when a hurricane hits, there's got to be a lot of coordination, like up in the Panhandle.
Sure.
And even we purchased Gulf Power, and Gulf Power is not always contiguous. You know, you look at here in Brevard County, there's no pockets, like that's another utility over there.
Right.
But Gulf Power was. So when a hurricane hits up there, it takes a lot of coordination with the utilities.
Sure.
What are you doing? You got to talk to one another because it's all interlocked. You know, the smart grid. You just can't be, all right, we just, you know, we're only served by this group over here. No, you get electricity, you're buying and selling. I mean, right now, that line that you pass when you go over to the Orlando International Airport, that's either selling or buying electricity, depending on the price. We're either shipping it out or we're buying it.
Yeah.
I mean, so, you know, that's part of the smart grid. And when you think of the smart grid, people get scared of it because we put in the automated meters.
Right.
You know, a lot of people said, well, you'll know what I'm doing. I don't know what you're doing other than you're using this much power per month. Other than that, we have no idea. But this sends out a little pulse. Somebody is sitting at a desk in Juno Beach, and they can see the complete grid. So it's sending back something, and if your home has a power outage, they can see, all right, it's isolated to that home, a ticket can be created, we can send a truck, the power will be put back on, and other than your microwave doing the old flashing, you'll probably never know it. And that's part of the smart grid. So that eliminated the need to go on your property to read the meter. That eliminated someone having to knock on the door and say, you know, you forgot to pay your bill and you owe this much. All those things now are automated as part of the smart grid. But with that, we have other features. There's things called automated feeder switches, which has been a game changer as far as putting power back on quickly. And the first time I saw an example of this was in Cocoa Beach. Somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning who had had a few too many decided, I think I can play chicken with a pole. And they ran into the pole, and it took power out. Usually something like that in the past, you got to go get a new pole. You've got to dig. I mean, that's a big process. But with these automated feeder switches, what it did was it was able to backfeed and say, we're going to go, only that area now is going to be out, that maybe that one neighborhood, instead of that entire strip where you've got miles of everybody's out because of that one pole. So those are game changers. And during the hurricane, those keep a lot of people in power. So usually what happens, because people will say, why did I get a flicker? Well, a lot of it is vegetation. A lot of it is wind, debris being thrown into the wires, and animals. So imagine in your kitchen, you've got a ground fault indicator that when something, if it's wet on the floor, you're in bare feet, and you reach over and touch something, you hope that that circuit shuts down, right? It's doing what it's supposed to do. Well, the same with the electrical grid. When there is something that comes in contact with it, we're not only protecting your equipment, we're protecting our equipment. So it's going to say, open that up. Stop the flow of electricity on that line. When it senses that it's gone, it's going to throw it back in. Just like in your home, you don't want your entire house to turn off just because something in your kitchen blew. Right. It's going to isolate it. And that's kind of what these automated feeder switches do, is say, it's only here, let's backflow, let's get that fixed. And that's usually where it requires the manual aspect of it, where somebody's got to go out and dig and get the pole out and get a new pole in. Well,
I'll tell you what, Bart, because this is all fascinating, but I really want to, since we're already kind of, let me see, it doesn't seem like it's fast, but it's already been like 45 minutes. So we only have like 15 minutes left. So out of respect for your time and the listeners' time, I want to get more into what you see more for Brevard. What are the fun things that you're excited about that are going to be happening? And then I also was going to ask, where do you see the Space Coast 5, 10, 20 years? So let's start with that. What do you see as far as business and manufacturing, a lot of aerospace coming to town? Where do you see, because again, being with the EDC, we always want to make sure we let the listener know kind of what's coming down the pipeline, what's exciting, what's moving, what's the buzz about. So tell me more.
Personally, I'd like to see more supply chain. We've learned through this pandemic that we can't be dependent on foreign countries to supply us with PPE, things like that. So I'm hoping we see more manufacturing moving in here. And maybe there'll be a new, again, using the term revolution, but some of the jobs lost in hospitality that we don't know if they'll come back. If you worked at a movie theater, is that going to come back? Sure. But these can turn into manufacturing jobs. So hopefully it's going to take the federal government to say, we've got to bring these here, and we've got to be competitive. Right. So within the next 15, 20 years, I hope to see continuous space, diversify. You can't have an all-space economy because we've seen what's happened in the past. Sure. But you need to learn how to diversify. But the crisis is going to be affordable housing. Right. We keep bringing in high-paying jobs. Well, we need to bring in manufacturing that can pay good wages, but they may not be the $100,000 a year plus that you may get with some of the high tech with people who are very well educated in that field. But there will continue to be a fight for talent. But the EDC, we're always faced with, when someone comes in here, they look at a number of things. And living in Titusville, I'll hear people say, well, it seems like all the projects go to Melbourne. And usually they have all these advisors and consultants that point them. You want to go look at Melbourne because, they factor in infrastructure, they look at affordable housing, they look at quality of life. So the EDC has been involved in all those, and workforce. What is your talent? We're blessed here because we've got great education system. You look at Indian River State College, you look at Eastern Florida State, you look at Daytona State College up there, you look at FIT, UCF, Embry-Riddle. I mean, these are major players. I mean, spectacular schools. So we've got the talent. Not every manufacturer, though, is going to say, I need somebody with a college degree. We've got...
or is it going to pay more than $60,000, even though there's some entry level that are competitive, 55 to 75. But yeah, let's be honest. Not every CNC operator is going to be in that six-figure department.
But where are they going to live? It's easy for a builder to say, I'm going to go after the people that are going to make $200,000 a year, highly educated and sought after. there's a lot more profit to that than, let's say, building a $100,000 house. But these are the things I think we're going to have to look at for the next 15 to 20 years. But, you know, I remember in 2010, I was chair of the Titusville Chamber, and the press came in, and it was like they wanted to do stories. Like, if you remember the 60 Minutes piece with Scott Pelley, I think his name is.
Right.
And Mayor Tully is still mad at him and invites him back and says, come look at us now.
Sure.
But they came in to do a story, and it was pretty much, oh, look at how sad and pathetic this is. And the press was asking me, what do you think's going to happen? Well, this area, we've been through this before, and we're prepared for it.
Right.
You know, where are you going to find? Brevard County is a great hidden secret. I mean, you look at, we've got St. John's, freshwater. We've got the intercoastal. We've got the beach. We've got KSC. We've got airports. We've got I-95. We've got train. We have cargo. I mean, we've got the port. Yeah. These are all fantastic places. So I continue to see it's just going to get better and better.
Amen. Amen. Oh, I see that as well. Are we ever going to see a new kind of energy? I mean, is there any in your R&D department? Is there anything like a like some kind of hydrofusion splitter thing, whatever, you know, kind of crazy technology that's that you guys are developing?
We're always looking. Yeah. You know, people have come to us and said, well, why not use the strength of the current out in the ocean? Yeah. It's a very caustic environment. You know, and there's a lot of technologies out there that they're great technologies, but they're not affordable or they're not reliable. You have to balance that whenever you look at your portfolio. You got to provide electricity around the clock every single minute of the year, every single second of the year. Yeah. But yeah, right now there is something that we're going to be working with hydrogen, green hydrogen. You're going to hear a lot more about that.
Yeah, you mentioned that, so that's what I was kind of alluding to before we said goodbye.
Yeah, and we've got an upcoming webinar with one of our BPs who's going to explain that, and he can explain it much better than I can tell you that.
Well, all the more reason to bring you back on. We'll have the guest, and we'll talk about hydrogen next time. So I think your outlook is pretty it reflects a lot of other people's sentiments, you know, and when people say, well, Titusville got the worst of it, I mean, yeah, but they're recovering beautifully. They're recovering beautifully. You know, it's still, you know, we talk about affordable housing when people are like, Jesse, where do I go? I have a limited budget. I go, well, would you consider, you know, like Fellsmere or Mims, Titusville? Because we are still finding that, you know, of all the county, those are still a little more reasonable than say, you know,
little more affordable.
The beach side or Vieira or those types of things.
Yeah, but getting back to the EDC, you know, I work with wonderful people there. Linda is a driven professional.
Oh,
we're fortunate to have her. You know, you look at some of the leaders in this community, Frank DeBello.
Yes.
You know, Bill Brown, who made the decision to stay here, the leadership at Embraer that decided to make a commitment to this, Arion moving here now. I mean, that wasn't done by accident. Again, you had people like Linda, our leadership, elected officials that recruited them and said, come to Brevard County. Perfect. And it's not easy because it's competitive. Everybody in the world wants these companies, and they decided to make a home here.
Yeah, and I've seen on NASA Boulevard, there's a beautiful Northrop Grumman campus, and it's, I didn't even recognize it. Like, I was driving by.
It's world class.
They got the landscaping now. They got just beautiful. I mean, the parking. I mean, everything's being situated.
In Harris and Palm Bay, that's a beautiful campus.
Yeah. Well, Harris is a little more spread out, but the L3 Harris, you know, they have the headquarters there on NASA as well. Yeah. You know, so and all that's right by our local international airport, Melbourne International, or as we call it, Orlando in Melbourne. They rebranded it. So, but we're getting all of the technology, all of the amenities that any other airport would have, especially for an airport that is hosting a couple of private companies, like you said, Embraer and Arion. Really excited about Arion, by the way. I got to get Tom in here. But I know there's so much going on. The groundbreaking for 200 some odd acre campus, and they're going to have everything there.
We're excited.
So exciting, yeah.
That was a great project. So, you know, support your EDC. I think that's important because we look at a number of things. It's like, you know, I hear people say, well, we brought in a lot of jobs. We want to continue to bring in the jobs. And it's almost like saying, all right, if you had a big company, well, do you get rid of your human resources department when you hired enough people? No, there's always things that you're looking at. bringing in, training the workforce, things like that. So I think the EDC here does, we're one of the best in the world.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
It's not bragging if it's true.
It's not bragging. We do have something very special here. Some very special people. You're one of the many people that make it up, and so we all applaud you. Thanks so much, Bart. You're part of our community, and
it's a pleasure to live here and represent everybody. And working for FPL, it's great to get out there. Somehow God lined me up with working for FPL, and it's been a perfect fit for me. I couldn't think of working for a better company somewhere else.
Exactly. So. And hopefully we'll see you out and about here soon.
I hope so.
Without like we mentioned, without the face-to-face and, all the galas and all the fundraising events and all those cool things we used to do, I really hope that all comes back. Real quick, before we sign off, what does Bart do in your spare time?
Oh, boy. Well, in my lifetime, I've jumped out of an airplane. I've been on a balloon. I've gone spelunking. I've gone whitewater rafting.
Wow.
I was playing basketball. That's the one thing this pandemic has really hurt me, and it's shown at the waistline. But,
sure.
You get a little older, and your jump shot doesn't quite have the spring.
Right.
But still, it was good exercise. It was socialization.
Right.
I don't get to do that anymore, but, a lot of time with the puppy, too.
I bet.
And family.
Yes, I certainly bet. How do I phrase this? Is a 20-year-old Bart pleased at where you ended up?
Well, I think he's shocked.
He's shocked?
When I got out of college, Carter was leaving. Reagan was coming in.
Right.
Interest rates were around 16%. I couldn't get hired anywhere.
Right.
Anywhere. I have a box of rejection letters.
Right.
So the 20-year-old Bart, to see where he's at now, is saying, how did you do that?
Right.
Almost every job I applied for, I did not have the credentials of the people I worked with. But, again, you have to be driven. You have to love what you do.
Right.
And some weeks you put in 80 hours, driving back and forth, doing all these things. But if you're having fun, you don't call it work. You say, I love this. Because when you see things getting done, when you see a difference being made, when you see things moving forward in the right direction, it's rewarding.
Right. I love that. And finally, for me personally, being in real estate here on Brevard County, I'm a big fan of anything, solar. I mean, I love some of the builders who are building not just with gas, but natural gas, and they're really building a sustainable product included with solar. How long before you think builders are just going to put in a nice Tesla wall, like a nice battery wall that's like pre-wired and everything else for solar?
They're probably already doing it. We're seeing more and more people put whole house solar on their property, and we don't have a problem with that. I mean, that's the way to go. I think it helps the environment. But you also have to realize they need a backup, which is going to be us.
Exactly.
So you have to balance both. I mean, if everybody went solar, what would that do to a Florida Power and Light? But we have the solar fields where we can provide you with those. So if you are on a fixed income, if you live in an area where you can't put solar on your roof, you don't have the roof, you can join our program. So Solar Together, look it up. Again, you're going to be receiving green energy, and that's part of the 30 million solar panels by the year 2030.
Wow.
So it's a great program.
Right.
So look at the cost of solar. And I'm for solar. I looked at putting it on my roof just to help warm my pool. But when the companies came out, they said, you got to cut down all these trees. And I said, well, the reason I moved here is all those trees. So I just said, well, I'm not going to put
it's
it
not
up
for
there.
me. Right.
It's not for me.
Exactly.
It doesn't work for everybody. Plus, you think you put solar on your roof and it's just maintenance free. Make sure you're reading the contract and what they're going to stand behind and how long has that company been around.
Because, I have friends, including my wife, in roofing. One of the biggest challenges is to tell that homeowner with that nice solar, all that stuff, A, sometimes the insurance policy doesn't cover it.
Yeah.
B, in order to fix your roof, we got to disassemble that whole array of solar panels on your roof, take that down. And, not a whole lot of roofing companies will assume the liability by taking it down. So they'll ask for you or your solar company to come and take it down before they can even work on your roof.
Exactly.
So it's a little bit. So again, it's a lovely idea. I love the Tesla tiles that look like, again, a roof tile. I think those are magnificent. I've seen there's a house in our neighborhood that has one of those. I think that's really cool. So I think as it gets adopted better, just like with any technology, solar will have its renaissance where everybody's into it. Everybody's doing cool things with it. Right now, I think it's still, even after like 20, 30 years of it kind of weaning, it, again, more affordable. I mean, I remember, you'd have to have a whole, again, just heating a pool. It was like a novelty.
Well, calculators.
That only so many people, right?
Calculators. I can remember carrying around a bag phone that was this big. But that's what's great about our Solar Together program, is that you can have all those advantages of solar without having to put it on your roof, without having to maintain it. A lot of the municipalities in Brevard County, including Brevard County, have signed up for the program, along with some major large, let's say, box stores and manufacturers, as part of their sustainability program, have signed up for this program. So I welcome people to take a look at it. And again, weigh your options. People are still going to want to put solar on their roof, and they're more than welcome to do so. People will say, we're anti-solar. No, we're not. We just don't want you to produce so much solar. You're putting it back into our grid. We don't know how it reacts. We have to provide electricity 24/7. Are you going to be part of that generation we have to rely on? Is it always going to be there?
Right.
Those are what keep us up at night, is how are we going to make all that work? And if it works, we'll do it.
Certainly. Well, I find like there may be some futuristic things. When I think of like Jetsons and other things, I think of these, manipulating power to where it's suspending craft. You have like magnets. You have like almost like, instead of like a train line with a rail, you have like a
gyroscope.
Magnetic. Rail where just the cars just follow the pulse of the magnetic propulsion, whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of fun things that we're going to be looking at. Even Elon, with his Hyperloop, underground. I think that technology is really cool with using electromagnetic propulsion. Very clean. Depending on where the energy is coming from, but just super fast, super efficient. And I'd like to see where we see a grid that really is just impervious to any kind of malicious storm or anything else. I think if we could get to a place where now we have our phones charging wirelessly on a pad. What if we did that with streets? Where the electric vehicle will just be charged while it's driving on this electrical grid in the roads.
Why not take the heat from the asphalt and somehow use that to create steam, which can help generate electricity?
Sure.
Things like that. I mean, we look at that all the time.
Really?
And we look at how can we provide microgrids so that during a storm, maybe we don't have to worry about getting this transmission line up. You'll be able to have one of these batteries right here. So we're constantly looking at that, is how can we reduce our dependence on just the entire grid where you might have something, because we live in a day and age where, God forbid, if we lose a substation, if you lost a substation in New York to something horrible, I mean, what would it do? It could take weeks to maybe get back on in there.
Certainly.
So it's something that we have to look at. But at FPL, we've put a lot of money in investment. When you pay your bill, that money's going back in. When you see that new pole being put in there, that's to make us more storm resilient, harden the system, so that if a hurricane blows through, look, wires are going to fall to the ground, because you're going to have trees and things that are going to take them out. But putting wire back up takes a lot less time than in 2004, having to put a new pole in, rebuild your infrastructure.
Exactly.
What we saw after Hurricane Andrew, I was down there for that. I told you where I grew up in South Florida.
I was in Hollywood, and it was supposed to come up Hollywood Boulevard, but it made a beeline to Homestead at the last minute.
It wasn't supposed to be quite that strong, but we learned a lot of lessons from that. And at the time, we actually had an insurance policy. And after that, the insurance industry said, we're not covering anybody for hurricanes anymore.
Exactly.
So, and getting the people here, thank God we have the leadership that they can pick up the phone, and even during a COVID environment, get them down here. And COVID's been, how do you bring people, when we go to Alabama to help restore power, how do you keep the crews separated? How do you keep them safe?
Right.
Because we don't want anybody getting sick. We don't want any super spreader events. It's going to take these people out where they can't respond if a storm's here. So there were a lot of issues.
And not only that, but what if the replacements are compromised as well?
Exactly.
And now you have no workforce.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that could be dangerous.
And we've got people working from home. Even our employees are taking their trucks home, because you can't have them congregate at a service center without having an entire workforce that might be compromised with the virus. So there's been a number of things our management has to look at and plan ahead. So these are the type of guys that when they go to bed, they look and say, what are the lessons learned? What am I doing tomorrow? How can I create something more affordable, cleaner, and more reliable?
Exactly. And that's the FPL way.
That's the FPL way.
I love it.
38
Bart,
years.
What a pleasure.
Likewise.
And
I've enjoyed it.
And are you going to, I mean, is a 40 the magical number, or are you just going to keep going?
You know, I don't know yet. As long as the company has treated me very well, and I enjoy working here. So, you know, maybe it's like Alex Trebek. One of my big things in life was I got out there before he passed away, and I got to a taping, and somebody asked him, when are you going to retire? And he said, you know, I'll probably wake up one morning and decide, but right now, if someone were to replace me, how do you introduce them to everyone in this community who is a stakeholder you have that relationship with? Because that's the great thing about Brevard and Indian River counties are the people. You know, we can work well together. But if you just say, all right, here's my replacement, bye, and they haven't met them one-on-one, they haven't seen them, they haven't talked to them, where I can walk away and say, you two talk, get to know each other.
So it sounds like you need an exit strategy. You got to start, you got to get it like a little apprentice and teach them the ways.
Yeah, you know, but it's still at work. There are people that have more years than me, and they're still, and thank God they're there, because quite frankly, with the gray tsunami coming, and that's why we need the EDC, we need some of the certification programs we have, because there are some people stepping into some big shoes to fill, and we need them.
The gray tsunami. That's
the gray tsunami.
That's a unique term.
Gray hurricane for this side of the world.
I mean, I get it. Tell a listener if they've never heard that term before.
It just means that there's a lot of people, the baby boomers, that are coming up to the retirement age, and behind them, you know, we were probably the last. You look at me with almost 38 years at FPL. How many other people can say that? Me with one wife. How many people can say that?
Loyalty doesn't exist, and it goes both ways.
Exactly.
Florida's a right to work, state, as many of the others, and they're, we don't have unions, or at least big unions, powerful unions that will force, companies to keep us, or legislate ways for companies to not terminate or whatever else. And we're finding that, that wasn't really successful. Didn't really make sense to keep somebody who was not really inspired anymore, or maybe they lost direction, or whatever else, or maybe they really truly needed to age out, So, and that happens, new technologies come out. What you learned 40 years ago to get into your whatever profession you're in, sometimes it loses legs, and it doesn't last any further.
And you still have to take a chance. Like I said, almost every job that I've had at FPL, I was underqualified for. And if someone hadn't said, well, you don't meet this qualification. I mean, I worked in one group where I was in there with a bunch of engineers. One guy was a nuclear engineer.
Right.
Here I am with my business management degree from Florida State, and he's got his nuclear engineering degree.
Sure.
I felt intimidated, but that also motivated me to say, I got to work harder than him. I got to find a way to be better than him, because I'm dealing with some pretty sharp people.
Right.
And that, so don't always look at a piece of paper and judge somebody and say, here, take that risk, because I'm I'm an example of it. People took risks and said, we're going to hire you. You probably don't have all the qualifications, but that just motivated me to work harder and say, I might not, but I'm going to acquire them one way or another.
EDC is really big about their workforce initiative.
Correct.
Getting trained individuals. Is solar or that kind of technology, is that something that you would encourage somebody that is just exiting pretty much high school, maybe they're looking for a trade? Is a solar, I mean, is that a promising career choice?
It is, because with NextEra Energy, we've got wind fields, we've got the solar fields. You need technicians that can go out there. It's a good, rewarding career.
Right.
You don't have the wind here in Florida, but if you don't mind going to, somewhere that's a little bit more remote, but you can learn something, you can move up quickly, because with that, there's other opportunities within our company.
Right.
But it's good to learn the renewable end.
Right.
You might end up with a career in nuclear. But that's why I've been blessed with this company, because it's provided me with a lot of opportunities. And I've been dealing with one of the elected officials in Palm Bay. He said, "Can you please talk to this student. He's at Palm Bay High School, and I've had conversations with him, and he's an intelligent guy, and he wants to get into that field. And it's great to give him some recommendations. I mean, even, junior achievement, I get to go in and speak to a classroom, like a career fair, almost like show and tell them, here's my career. Here's why you should get into it.
I love that. And just like, FPL, it seems like there's always kind of, as technologies will require more skilled tradesmen and so forth. Because before, there was a thing, and like you mentioned, training people on
the job,
on reading meters.
Yeah.
Well, now that it's all electric, you don't have people going to backyard to backyard anymore.
Correct.
So as one service falls, then a new one emerges, and how does FBL help with on-job training and helping people accelerate through the career? Because I really want to get this out, but again, part of our workforce initiative at the EDC is always to help our young members, our young students, and so forth, looking for a place. So I really want them to understand that there's places out there that will take you wherever you're at and give you the training. And don't worry, but they're also going to be training you for what's coming around the corner. And so you're never going to be left without, well, here's one skill set. Now that it's retiring, so do you, essentially. Because, some companies don't have that. Either you fit in their mold as far as what that position needs, or you don't. And when that position is no longer available, well, neither is your job here either. So going from meter readers then to the electric grid, where everything's digital, everything's computerized. Poll workers, I don't think those will ever go out of style. I think poll workers will always be here and needed.
They'll always be needed, but as you are putting in a smarter grid, for example, when I told you about the automated feeder switches, well, that's less labor intensive. So you're making an investment to try to reduce things that require someone to go out in a truck and get up in that bucket and get on the pole, because that gets expensive. I mean, that's part of your operations. So if you can do that with technology and keep bills affordable and keep the power reliable and clean, then you're winning. But yes, when we realized, all right, we're going to be putting in these automated meters, it was sad, because the hardest working people I've seen at FPL were the meter readers. I mean, some days
that's a tough
they
job.
go out and walk 11 miles, walk in everybody's backyard. If you made more than 3 errors out of 10,000 meters, 10,000 reads, you made more than 3 errors, I had to talk to you about your performance.
Wow. Now, that's like
Edison
0.03% error.
Edison Electric Institute, whenever they did comparisons, they always looked at errors per 1,000. They looked at FPL and said, you guys do errors per 10,000? These guys they worked hard. You got chased by dogs.
Oh, yeah.
You're sweaty. You're out in the rain. But we knew this had to end. Automation was the way it was going to go. So we were able to work with some of them and say, look, there may be a job out in Oklahoma at a wind farm, but you're going to learn a new trade, something that's not going to go away. Wind is not going to go away. So a lot of them were able to transition into new jobs, things like that.
That's good.
Some of the others, go get your schooling done and come back to us. Get those certifications. Like we talk about the EDC, the Certified Production Technician Program.
Great program.
Because you're showing initiative. You're showing somebody, I've already learned about the workforce. I'm ready to step in. You're going to be that much ahead. If I'm hiring, I'm looking and saying, I'm hiring this person. They showed the initiative. They passed this, and I'm going to hire them over some of the other people that might look good, but they're not proven. You've just proven yourself a little bit more.
Exactly. Any closing thoughts or words of encouragement?
Well, it's a pleasure to work in this community. I was an internal auditor, and I worked the entire system. But Brevard County, when I got here, there was something special about it. Met my wife here, raised 3 daughters here, 3 sons-in-law have come from here. It's been great, and even though my wife looks and says, well, should we downsize and move somewhere else, my heart's here in Brevard. It's a unique area. This is home. I hate summertime. I hate the heat.
As we all do.
When I do retire, you won't find me here in the summertime because you wear something like this and you go out to your car and you're soaked.
It's what I call during the summer 2 or 3 shirt days. I mean I kind of look at the weather going, okay, 100% humidity, 89 or above. That's a 3-shirt day.
But we live in this community. Elected officials. Mm-hmm. I get to work with them, and let me put a plug in for them because they get beat up by social media. But I get to see their character during storms when there's tremendous pressure. These people don't get paid a lot. They're doing it for a cause. Right. They're not doing it for the money. They're trying to make a difference. We have good elected officials. So continue to vote, continue to ask the right questions, get involved, find out what makes your community tick and what you can do to make it better.
I love that. More inspiring words from Bart. Thanks so much. It's been a very fun hour.
It's been a pleasure.
And I think everybody learned a lot, including myself.
I need garnet and gold glasses. I like the orange and blue are bothering me a little bit, but I need the garnet and gold glasses.
I will introduce you to my ophthalmologist. They have all shapes and sizes for you.
Go Knowles.
Go Knowles. Until next time, thank you all for watching another episode of Business Elite Brevard Edition. My name is Jesse, and until next time, may all of your business be a success. Take care. We love you.